Hey, Sarah.
Hey,
Are you hungry?
I'm really fucking hungry right now.
Same. I'm like so hungry. I feel like I'm not safe to drive.
Yeah, and that we are, let's see, I woke up at 8,
Show off.
8 hours into a fast for Palestine.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fucking wimp.
Yeah. My brain just keeps being like, oh, why don't you go get a snack before you keep doing this recording?
Yeah.
Shut up, brain.
Well, and that's the thing, like the brain and the body and the ways that our privilege and the experience of just like having had food security and never really having experienced hunger in any significant way, it is a reminder of how much the body is in charge.
Yeah.
The body's in charge, and a lot that we do is to try and assuage the body so that, we can continue whatever other activities or the experiences of the mind. I'm sort of speaking for myself, but that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And there are so many things when you're living as like a relatively privileged person in a city where you can like meet all of your physical needs. Like they're just pretty much met by default, I mean, I get...
Yeah, if you have secure housing and you have secure income, then there are struggles under late stage capitalism for all of us. And we get into that on that podcast.
Yes,
on this podcast quite
and
a bit.
like I'm not usually yay, I'm going to work right now. So, okay. Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this? We're doing this because there is a fast launching today in Seattle that calls upon caregivers and parents to fast for Palestine and in solidarity with Palestinians, Palestinian parents and caregivers and children who are experiencing a forced starvation campaign right now, in addition to ethnic cleansing and being under siege. And I know a lot of folks have been seeing the same kinds of pictures and videos that you and I have over the course of the past month. I mean, certainly over the course of the past 2 years, but the intensity of the starvation campaign has just ramped up so much. And I think the sense of urgency and desperation all of us feel to try and stop it and to try and just keep raising awareness and putting pressure on the people who can stop it any way that we possibly can is particularly acute and strong right now. So when I got sent this, I immediately knew that I wanted to do it, in part because it's a new and creative way to keep what is happening in Palestine in front of people, because it is an opportunity for me personally to have a physical experience that is a symbolic expression of solidarity with people who don't have this choice. And for me to really be in touch with why I care about this so much. And I think particularly as a parent and a caregiver, it's not just your own experience of hunger, but and this is not something that I am experimenting with or doing as part of this protest, but it's thinking about what it would be like to be a parent and a caregiver who had to watch your children be hungry and watch your children and the children around you starve. And the desperation that you would feel and how I know you and I and everyone in our lives who is raising children and cares for children, there's nothing we wouldn't do in those circumstances to try and save them, to try and feed them. And so it's just also a way for me to deepen my commitment to them, spiritually even.
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about this on Sunday, August 10th, which is the first day of the fast. And it's going to be this relay where different groups in different cities all over the country take a week at a time, and it's going to last like through the end of the year, I think.
Yes. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to record this for Mistakes Were Made listeners is because there's a way that you can get involved too. If you are in Seattle, you can still join campaigns that will be happening based out of other cities around the country. And if you're in any other city in the country, you can start your own campaign. You can join an existing campaign. And the goal is that there will be people fasting, a kind of like collective hunger strike until the first of the year. And our demands are an immediate ceasefire and immediate unconditional food aid to Gaza.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll have, of course, that info in the show notes. And, you can even, if you're listening to this on Friday, the day that it comes out, you can start fasting right away.
Yeah.
And join us. It sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. But it could suck together.
Yeah.
That's always a little bit better. You can come find us on the Mistakes Were Made Instagram account if you are interested and want to join us in some way. You can also find me on my Instagram account, which is @Stute, STUTE, where I'll have information about the fast too. And yeah, I would love for Mistakes Were Made listeners to get involved with this campaign. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, hit us up. But also because we are so dizzy with hunger pains this week, we didn't record a new episode, but we did handpick a really great episode from last season that we're going to share with you today. So this is a rerun, but we will be back in 3 weeks with a brand new episode with the three of us. And thanks so much for listening. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine. See y'all soon.
Hey, Alex.
Yes, Sarah?
Do you ever worry that non-monogamy might be distracting you from engaging in more important things?
No, not really.
What about when I was at the protest last week and you were on a date?
No comment.
Welcome to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us. I'm Sarah. I'm a queer, non-monogamous therapist and increasingly agitated anarchist rabble-rouser.
And
Who wrote this?
I'm her husband, Alex, a closet conservative who only pretends to be progressive to get laid.
And I'm Jessica here, producing, resident monogamist, and I'm the person who takes the kids to fast food when Sarah's at a protest and Alex is out on a date. But actually, one of the formative experiences in Alex and my friendship was bailing Sarah out of jail after a politically motivated incident.
That's
call it that.
generous.
Yeah.
That's generous. Thank you.
She was truly a political prisoner for 4 hours on New Year's Eve in 1999.
And that's not the only time that I've run jail support for you, let's say.
Not the only time. It's true.
No.
You're really good at it. Thank you.
Anytime.
I have to say, when I make that phone call and your voice is on the other end, I feel better. So thank you.
It's one of my life's greatest honors to be a jail phone call.
It's funny. They say that you marry someone who's like your father or whatever. And when you got arrested in 1999, your father was like, let her rot in jail.
It was.
And I am
Direct
now
quote.
taking the same position.
Ouch.
He's all, don't call me, I'm on a date.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. I had mixed feelings about going on a date, but I had already rescheduled it once. Anyway, moving on.
I thought it was sweet and perhaps on brand for this episode about how polyamory can create collectivist situations that allow for radical protest.
Okay, so yeah, I guess the impetus for this episode and talking about political entanglements with non-monogamy was I was on yet another different date. They said it wasn't a date, but then they bought Jell-O shots, so I think it was kind of like a date. They texted me this summary of this article from The Atlantic, which is called Polyamory, the Ruling Class's Latest Fad. And it was horrifying, especially the condensed version of it. I was just very unhappy.
I also was very unhappy.
Yeah, then I told you about it.
I feel like you got halfway through the title and I was already yelling.
Yeah. And so I just read that part and then I had to get past the Atlantic paywall. And once I did, I realized the article was from February. So it's not the most timely, but still, we were reacting to it.
So, why are we talking about it now? I mean, other than just we had a big reaction to someone sending it to us, but why else?
Well, I noticed that you just came out of our kids' room when you were putting them to bed, yelling about the fascist state for the 5th night in a row. So maybe it has something to do with that.
That's how they like to go to sleep. It soothes them. Okay? That's our bedtime routine, is yelling about the fascist state together. As we record this episode, campuses are in revolt in support of Palestine and against the genocide in Gaza. I may or may not be facing charges for protesting the genocide, and it feels like we're on the precipice of something. In short, like everybody else, this week, this month, this year, we want to talk about politics. And as ever, on this podcast, polyamory is our muse. So that's why we're talking about it. Because radical politics and more people engaging with radical politics feels like the zeitgeist, and polyamory also feels like the zeitgeist. So it's no surprise that people are writing about how these two things interact with each other. And we've got thoughts, we've got feelings.
Yes, thoughts and feelings. Well, I want to just read the thing that was texted to me. Because it's, or parts of it, because this is what set us off. So it says, Harper argues that polyamory is a quasi self-help fad that is largely achievable only by a small group of people. And then this is a quote from the article. The rich, who marry within their social class to combine their wealth, exacerbating inequality, enjoy the advantages of the double income 2-parent household, and then grow tired of these very luxuries. From their gilded pedestals, they declare polyamory superior to monogamy. This brand of free love requires the disposable income and time to pay babysitters and pencil in their panoply of paramours that are foreclosed to the laboring masses. That was a lot of long dashes.
That was a lot of alliteration, too.
Yes. It's very
How writerly.
well written, Sarah.
Quite writerly.
And then there's so then once I got behind the paywall, that you can actually listen to the article, which is amazing because of the way that the person who read it delivered it. And so this is actually, I want to go on and play this clip. The article is technically a review of More by Molly Rodden Winter that we talked about, I think, a couple episodes ago, that book. So he's kind of using that as the source material to make his critique.
And just to remind people of that book, More was probably the first blockbuster memoir about someone opening up their marriage that has come out. And it was written by a wealthy or...
a white lady from Brooklyn.
White lady from Park Slope.
Yeah.
And people had really strong reactions to it, including us on one of those episodes. So.
Okay, so here goes.
In this way, More is a near-perfect time capsule of the banal pleasure-seeking of wealthy, elite culture in the 2020s, and a neat encapsulation of its flaws. This culture would have us believe that the interminable self-improvement projects, navel-gazing, and sexual peccadillos are the new face of progress. The climate warms, wars rage, and our country lurches toward a perilous election. All problems that require real action, real progress. And yet somehow, "you do you" has become the American ruling class's 3-word Bible.
So, Sarah, I just want to know why you don't care about the climate warming. And clearly your relationship choices are a reflection of your total disregard for that.
There is so much that is just driving me nuts about this quote right out the gate. And I want to hear from Jessica about it. But the one thing I will just say about the climate change comment is I'm like, what? Monogamous people don't care about fixing climate change. Nobody is caring enough about fixing climate change. Like, that is generally agreed.
Yes.
We have a huge problem with apathy, and I don't understand. Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how he's saying anything different than, like, people would rather be having sex than fixing climate change. Like, that's what I hear him saying. and insisting on using the word peccadillos, which really sticks in my craw.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe by extension you could say like that the people who are in their kind of like most powerful generative period, if we wanted to give them a little credit for developing the idea, like it's people who are in their 40s who should be not engaged with the foibles and peccadillos of sex and should in fact be like leading the way on these more important issues, which he names as wars and the country lurching towards a perilous election, and climate change.
And to be fair, like before I just like start in what he said is some of the critiques that we also had in our episode about the gentrification of polyamory. So it is worth saying that like the elite classes in this country will engage in almost anything else but challenging political change. And he's not wrong about that. I think the target being polyamory is an interesting choice.
Yeah. And I think this like started to raise the question of like, is there actually any evidence that being polyamorous makes you like somehow less politically engaged? He did not provide any in the article. You're both looking at me like I'm going to answer that question. Not according to the person who is putting forth that theory. No, there is no evidence.
So no evidence from him.
I mean, it is interesting that this is anecdotal. This is like me following the vibes. But it is true that in this country, political awakenings have coincided with sexual awakenings. I mean, these things have never really been separate in my understanding of the history of radical politics in the United States. What are your thoughts about that? Does that feel right? Am I following the right vibes?
Yeah, I mean, that really tracks to me and certainly makes me think about the 60s in a way that I've been thinking about the 60s all week because of the protest movement. So it's interesting to think about those things going hand in hand. And like, I don't know, just the idea that you become middle-aged and therefore are no longer supposed to be exploring who you are as a sexual person is like just one more tool of control. I'm sure we're going to like get into this, but
but the idea that idea kind of goes hand in hand with the idea that you become middle-aged and you become more conservative and don't care about politics as much too. So it's kind of weird to like put those two ideas together, I guess. And
he's not really talking about radical politics.
Not radical enough for Sarah.
Well, I'm sure that this guy, if we wanted to see if he's been weighing in on the pro-Palestine protests, would find it very unseemly for middle-aged people to be engaged in that too.
Right.
What this sounds like is this is the age where you're supposed to be conforming, and anything short of conforming is embarrassing. You're embarrassing me. This guy is reminding me of my dad.
So, yeah, I guess one of the things that came up in like reading this, and we can dig more into like clips from it later if we have time, but like it seems like it all seems a little bit puritanical.
Yeah,
definitely.
It seems and I think it's like tying back to this idea that like exploring one's sexual identity and that kind of like liberation is sort of like frivolous and indulgent. And it's like the court of Louis the 14th or whatever, like we're all like doing shit like that, it's like the rich, what he's saying is like the rich elite classes are just like tootling around in these frivolities when serious stuff is going on.
It is interesting. And I kind of am curious to have you two reflect on this idea that sexual liberation is by its nature indulgent, takes you away from more important causes, kind of like turns you inward in a selfish way. One of the reasons why I'm asking that is because there is something in me that agrees with it against my wishes. So it's clear that there's some kind of strong cultural messaging there.
Yeah. I mean, I see that, right? And it's easy to be like, oh, all someone cares about is dating. I mean, I remember like starting to teach and like an older faculty member taking me aside and saying, don't worry, like 90% of what's on their mind is the dating ritual, I believe is what he said.
Remember exactly
that
those
conversation,
words.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, so you just get the other 10% and do what you can with it, basically.
I love that. I've thought about that so many times.
Yeah, I've thought about it all the time.
Yeah.
So like, I see that as a phenomenon, but I think like, I just am so profoundly depressed by the idea that you're supposed to hit middle age and just everything is settled, who you are, everything about you, that's done. It's like you're just supposed to, I don't know, you're just supposed to then do the same thing for the rest of your entire life and then retire and then die. I feel like that's the narrative, and I find that profoundly distressing. Or like maybe or you're just supposed to get more and more conservative and hate young people. I don't know.
And then also die.
And then also die. Yes.
It definitely ends in death.
But don't
does
ever
all end in death.
think about death or prepare for it in any way. But
Going back to last episode. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, one of the reasons why, as I was listening to you talk, I think it resonates with me in some uncomfortable way, this idea that sexual liberation and exploration is a distraction from things that are more real and more important, is because that's kind of part of my narrative of what happened to the political movements of the 60s and 70s. Like, I know I said just a moment ago that these things had always gone hand in hand, but I think I really absorbed this cultural narrative that people had really good politics, they were really committed, they were like on a good road, and then they all started having sex with each other and everything kind of fell apart and they all had bad relationships and they kind of like did damage to their kids, and it's not well-founded. It's like a weird feeling.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sarah, because I was thinking about the same thing, and I decided to do a little bit of research because I definitely learned in school. I couldn't remember the name of the book, but in one of my classes that was kind of like American cultural history, they talked about this exact thing, that like in the 60s, everybody was like, very free and exploratory and critiquing and radical and stuff like that. And then they kind of turned all of that inward in the 70s. And I tried to kind of look this up, and there's this the Wikipedia article on the Me generation talks about the 60s are remembered as a time of political protest, radical experimentation with new cultural experiences, the sexual revolution, happenings, mainstream awareness of Eastern religions. The 1970s have been described as a transitional era where the self-help of the 60s became self-gratification and eventually devolved into the selfishness of the 1980s. So kind of like what you're saying.
So there are so many uncomfortable feelings in this to me. First, a question. Does anyone know who said the personal is political? Which activist?
who did say that?
What?
Is this a quiz?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
I can't remember.
But I was just kind of curious, like what political movement they were associated with, which is why I'm asking. Part of why I'm uncomfortable with this is also because I'm a therapist. And so the idea that turning inward, self-exploration, exploration through relationships is ultimately leads to selfishness, which this quote that you just read directly says, is pretty uncomfortable for me too.
Well, I mean, as a professional, what's your opinion? Does it?
Well, absolutely not. And also, I'm just in real time realizing that I have internalized some of these narratives in interesting ways. I absolutely believe that understanding your own motivations, your mind and emotions, the source of those things, and how it connects to the larger world is something that you do for yourself and for the collective.
Yeah.
I think the more self-awareness that people have, the better members of the collective they are. But I'm not sure that I've even really fully unpacked all of that now that we're looking at it.
Yeah, it's so easy to see. I'll just speak to my own life. I mean, I just think about people who have or haven't done a lot of that kind of exploration and work, and like which ones I feel like I'm in deeper, more connected relationships with, and which ones it stays more surface, or it's just harder, or like I don't feel like I'm able to help them or they're able to help me with anything that I need like real life stuff.
And what's the difference between those two categories of people?
Like a person who has done a lot of self-reflection and exploration.
Oh,
I mean,
I
not
see.
necessarily sexual, but just like spent time on themselves.
I think you're talking about therapy.
Right. I'm talking about therapy. And I'm talking about my mom and I'm talking about my dad.
Right.
And
who
that
are,
is spoken like a woman who has gone to a lot of therapy.
Yeah. They people who were hippies, part of the me generation, right?
totally.
I don't know if your dad was a hippie, but
Oh, my
Oh,
dad
yeah.
was
Okay.
definitely a
Big
hippie.
time.
cool.
But he was maybe just in it for the pot. No. He had good politics.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a late night episode, so for sound effect, I'm opening a seltzy, a hard seltzy right now.
Ooh.
Nice. I looked it up. This is kind of funny, actually. The personal is political quote is attributed broadly to second wave feminism, and not to a single person. It was in this article, an essay by Carol Hanisch that was titled "The Personal is Political," but she disavows authorship of the phrase. Gloria Steinem has likened claiming authorship of the phrase to claiming authorship of World War II.
Like
So,
that it's bad?
I have no idea what that's
Wow.
supposed to mean, but I just think it's kind of funny that, like, if this were a thing that a man said, you'd know exactly who the fuck said it,
Yes.
and he would be laying claim to
I
it.
would
And
say
all
that
of
was
these
very
feminists are
collectivist
like,
of all of those
yeah,
feminists.
exactly.
They're
They're
like,
like, no, it wasn't me.
just kind of bubbled up from the collective. I don't know.
Exactly.
It was personal to all of us, and then it became political.
I'm sure one of their boyfriends said it, and then they took credit.
That makes
for
sense.
It.
Yeah,
that's
that tracks.
probably true. So yeah. Anyway, the personal is political. So can we talk about my research? I love talking about my research. So I was in the shower googling conservative polyamory after I started looking up like the actual kind of pathways from 60s progressive radical politics and free love to inward facing people doing yoga and becoming self-absorbed. And it seems like it's a little
Doing
more
yoga and buying stocks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the crazy thing is that, so I found this article in Time magazine from November called Polyamory Isn't Just for Liberals that was written by Christopher Gleason, who wrote that book, American Poly, A History. So he's going back through history and tracing the conservative drivers of polyamory. And there's a bunch of stuff in the early 20th century. And then then he gets to Ayn Rand comes up.
Wait, before we get to Ayn Rand, what is the stuff in the
I'm
early
surprised
20th
we
century?
didn't get to Ayn Rand already.
Is this the first time anyone has mentioned Ayn Rand on this podcast?
On this podcast, I think so.
He's starting to talk about the Beats, and it says, the Beats were not the only Americans to chide mainstream mores, nor to use literature to do so. There was also Ayn Rand, the anti-statist Russian-born novelist bent on destroying all impediments to personal autonomy. Rand dabbled with ethical non-monogamy, believing that her and her protege's shared commitment to her philosophy of objectivism provided sanction for their intimacy. So she's like boning her protege while they're both married. Though they were honest about the relationship, it brought great emotional distress to both their spouses, and her disregard for the feelings of all others involved made it unlikely for polyamorists to claim her as an intellectual forebearer. I just really liked that he's like, she's such a fucking bitch that nobody wants anything to do with her. In spite of being a leader in polyamorous thought, she's so mean to everybody and doesn't care about their feelings. So
My mind is
They
blown.
refuse
I
to
can't
claim her.
believe that all of the men who have lectured me about Ayn Rand over the years have never mentioned this detail.
Yeah.
I'm stunned.
yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So not our favorite, maybe. Or not our favorite polyamorous forebearer. She oh yeah, the other stuff before I'm remembering now was like talking about in like the Roaring 20s and flappers, and there's a lot of like free love, kind of early women's lib stuff where everybody is kind of having sex with each other and stuff like that. And then they're like in the post-war era, in the 50s, because the ways that like and during the New Deal, I think the ways that the welfare and programs were channeled really centered the nuclear family. So it kind of like led to a step back from that. So it had actually been kind of more free family structures, more kind of progressive, and then.
But how is that conservative?
I'm not saying it's conservative. I
Oh.
think they were just like laying out kind of the history.
I see.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like maybe sort of politically neutral. I think what he's kind of saying is that like it doesn't really have anything to do with like conservative or liberal politics. It has much more to do with like economic and social things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, which is maybe why I like the article, because it's a little bit Marxist, and he's talking about how the material origins of all of these trends that we like to pretend like are, you know, caused by some sort of other nebulous vibes or whatever. It's like because the government gave money and jobs to men during the Depression, and so people had to be in families, right? And in the 20s, people had a lot more money. Everybody could do whatever they wanted, and there wasn't those same restrictions.
Interesting. So that also kind of equates money with access to polyamory.
I guess in a way, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as an aside, and I think we might get to this, I really take issue with that too. I think that's a representation issue, not actually a statement of true demographic facts, true facts.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I haven't done a deep dive into this, but what I have looked up regarding the demographics of people who are polyamorous and non-monogamous is that they are a younger generation. The vast majority of people who are practicing it are in their 20s and 30s, not demographically wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. So just thought I'd throw that out as kind of problematic at the core.
Yeah, and I think you're right that it's a representation issue. And when you look for, when you're in the, you know, Brooklyn literati or whatever, the coastal elite, and you look for illustrations or examples of anything, then you're going to go to people who are like you, like rich, wealthy, coastal elite, maybe kind of progressive, liberal people, we should say. And so those are the people that end up represented in the books that get published about it, like Molly Rodden Winter, and the articles that get written ostensibly as reviews of those books, and like the whole dialogue
becomes a hall of mirrors.
Yeah, the hall of mirrors where, you know, one elite East Coast person is tearing down another elite East Coast person for being too elite and oblivious. And you're like, what are you guys doing? Yeah.
Also, I just realized that in the intro, you were talking about how you're a secret conservative. And then you also wrote this whole section about Ayn Rand in here. So now I'm like, whoa.
Copy pasted. I did also just call her a F and B word, which I now feel very bad about.
Right. Because we've been telling our kids they're not allowed to use that word.
Yeah. I think they're not there yet, but I feel like there should be an exception for Ayn Rand, but maybe not.
I will take it under consideration. Okay. Jessica and I will take it under consideration.
We'll take it to the Women's Council.
Okay. Yes. Take it to Gloria Steinem, and the lady wrote that article.
Gloria Steinem would be like, this is like trying to credit World War II. And we're like,
yeah,
okay.
That was a weird
Still
quote. I'm sorry
sense.
that I read that because it makes no sense. So then other stuff, big time polyamory news in this era. The book Stranger in a Strange Land, which I didn't really like. I've seen it on my parents' bookshelf. It is referenced in Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. So obviously very important. We don't know why or what it means because we were 8 when that song comes out. But it's this sci-fi book that came out in the late 60s, early 70s that is supposed to be like a challenge to social norms. And the premise is like this guy who grew up on Mars comes back to the US and he has like sort of neutral morality. He hasn't been like raised with all of the social mores that we have. And so he's just like, this seems really weird. And this guy's open-mindedness allows him to critique institutions like religion, money, the fear of death, and monogamy.
Interesting.
And Robert Heinlein goes on to like be a big time proponent of non-monogamy, but also a big time like conservative libertarian kind of like thinker.
I was kind of wondering when the libertarians were going to show up.
Yeah.
I was
Here
like, you know, like my sort of spidey sense for the libertarians was tingling. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Yeah.
I'm like back here thinking about how government like aid programs can like shape the family
Engineering.
unit. I was thinking about how so much of the stuff that came out of like the civil rights movement was then aid to families without fathers and the problems that caused. So I was going on a little rabbit hole about that in my mind.
I mean, what this all kind of points out is that family units and how they're how they manifest in a culture are by design.
Yeah.
That it's not some sort of natural and organic expression of the way relationships should be, but in fact, something that is like shaped by the culture and other systems and forces.
Yeah. Well, and check this out. Then this sort of like strain of libertarian conservative polyamory continues, and there's a bunch of like cults that are like hippies who have become done that 70s thing kind of that we were talking about, but they're not just like turning inward, they're like turning more capitalist libertarian, but they're still like, we should be able to do whatever we want in every realm, and they're kind of taking some of the free love stuff forward. And so that was like kind of going on throughout the 70s. And then this guy, so this is another quote from that article, this guy, Ryan Nearing, co-founder of the influential polyamory nonprofit Loving More, argued in 1984 that committed multi-partner relationships were identical to monogamous relationships in that they were characterized by the joys and trials of navigating careers, child rearing, spirituality, and asset sharing. What they offered that monogamy could not was, quote, far greater economic security and an increase in loving parents and role models. For Nearing, ethical non-monogamy meant intimacy without nuclear couple isolation, multiplicity without shallowness. Furthermore, those truly committed to the freedom afforded by limited government had no basis to deny such unions. So he's saying, like, we should be free to do whatever we want, and this is actually better, but it's kind of interesting because it sounds sort of like that's a reaction to the, like, breakdown, like this conservative reaction to the, like, breakdown of the nuclear family, blah, 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 like, that you were just kind of referencing, Jessica.
What I'm finding fascinating about this, though, is something, it touches back on the Mythbusters episode we did at the end of last season, where we asked the question is, like, are liberal people more likely to be polyamorous or conservative people? And that was one of the myths we busted, right? So this idea that polyamory is adopted by any particular ideological group or demographic or, class is really kind of getting pulled apart. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think statistically we kind of showed that that wasn't the case. And then when Ricky Thompson was on, we were also talking about like the differences in the way that these things present in different parts of the country, and that there's kind of at least perceived to be this binary between liberal progressives being polyamorous and conservatives being swingers. And I did like a little bit of research into that, and it seems like that is not really demonstrated, but sort of perceived to be true. And the basis is kind of like conservatives are more comfortable with structure, hierarchy, the idea that like, you are married to somebody, but then you can also be with other people. And apparently swinging has its origins in the military, in like military families that I guess are like on deployment or something like that. There was not like a lot of detail around that, but that's like one of the sort of rumored birthplaces of swinging culture.
I can confirm that in my practice, I have encountered families in the military where they speak to this being a kind of underground cultural element to being in the military.
To that, I must say, hot.
To that, I must say, who authored World War II? No.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It all started in World War II.
Okay, so I'm really appreciating this. We've kind of like neutralized the political piece of polyamory.
Yes. Thank you for indulging my long tangent into the question of whether polyamory is essentially like liberal or conservative. Clearly not.
It's not. And that's fascinating. And I think like, I'm not sure if it's important to go back to the article. What is the author's name?
Tyler Austin Harper. Sorry.
Tyler Austin Harper's article here. Although he does kind of just skewer this stereotype of liberal elites as the only people doing this. So I think this kind of like helps to point out that he's not really talking about polyamory or the way that it has existed or does exist in our culture in any kind of meaningful way or with any depth. I also want to take this opportunity for you and I to tell some embarrassing stories.
Of course,
Ooh,
yes.
yay.
I feel like that We've come to the part of the podcast
We
where
certainly have.
that's what
People
we
have
need
been
to do.
waiting, and now it's
Alex
time
got
for
to
me
talk about his research.
Shut
Now
the
we
fuck up
get
about
to
my research.
about mistakes
which was
we've made.
Extremely interesting, and now we talk about mistakes that we've made. Yeah, so because we have, I think it's fair to say that we have not exclusively interacted with people who had the same political orientation as us out in the world in our explorations of polyamory.
I mean, what I would say is over the course of the past 4.5 years or however long we've been polyamorous, there have been these like eruptive political moments that we have dated through.
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably in those...
That our dating has allowed us to completely ignore.
Exactly.
I don't remember what you're talking about because I was on too many dates.
I was on a date.
George Floyd who?
But for example, in the summer of 2020, we opened up, obviously, that was the uprisings were happening. And at that time, I had a number of encounters on the dating apps and in person where I like accidentally ended up on dates with people who had really, really profoundly different political values than I did, or where I would be chatting with someone on the apps and then I would say something to indicate that at that time I was a journalist and I was writing about some of the protests. And I would send people an article or something like that. And then they would just disconnect with me, or they would write some weird political rant and disconnect with me. And I feel like we've entered into a moment like that again with Palestine, where it's really present all the time in dating. And so, yeah, I wanted us to reflect.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit about, some might say that this would be a good opportunity to broaden your horizons. And I feel like we even had this conversation maybe when you kiss that Trump supporter by the ferry. I'm just gonna say
He's gonna say it.
Well,
That is what happened.
Do we get the whole story or?
Yeah.
I was promised embarrassing stories.
Embarrassing
and I want
stories.
to hear them.
Yeah. Well, so in the summer of 2020, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, kind of a moment like the one that we're in, protests and uprisings are roiling, and around justice and violence and state violence. And we're headed into an election. And I go on a date with a really wonderful woman who I had a lot in common with. She was easy to talk to. We were both parents. I believe she was actually associated with the military, now that I think about it. And, we're just like getting to know each other and enjoying it. It was smoke season. So then to kind of add to the apocalyptic feel, we like walk outside and we're like choking on the air or whatever. And she made some derogatory comment about wearing masks. And I think I remember at the moment being like, maybe this is like about the smoke. But, you're just like, shit. It's like,
derogatory comments about wearing masks in the summer of 2020.
yeah.
Dude.
And I was like, what's wrong with masks? And then she was just basically like, well, I don't want the government to tell me what to do. And
she should have said that. Well, then I can't see your beautiful face.
That's
the line I use.
That's good.
smooth.
That is good. Again, secret conservative.
Yeah.
I like it.
They really took the wrong tack with that whole anti-mask thing. Make it more smooth.
They should hire you for their comms. Yeah. And that pretty quickly led to it being revealed that she had supported Trump in the first election and was abstaining from voting in the upcoming election. And it was just like it was like this emotional heel turn, and I think it probably like changed me forever. It's like I have a kind of vigilance about that I didn't have back then. And I think in part because back then I would have probably still liked the idea that connecting across political lines through dating or other kind of social experiences was like valuable and important and part of what I wanted to be doing.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
And I remember at the end, and it's like, I was just, honestly, I did not know how to navigate it. I mean, I was honest. I said, well, I mean, my politics, I like sent you my articles and you know that I have pretty strong politics in the other direction. And I remember her being like, well, why does it matter? Why can't we like still connect with each other? And I was like, I don't exactly know how to address that, but it matters. You know, and I remember her asking if we could kiss, and I said yes. And then I felt so bad about it. And I never heard from her again. You know, it went nowhere, but it was like a very formative experience about like the kind of intersection of polyamory and politics, assumptions that I was making early on that people who are engaging in an alternative lifestyle would share my politics. Also assumptions that I would be more open to connecting with people who had really different political views than I did. And I think I learned I was not open to that in a dating context.
I'm struggling with this question because I do think that there are. I too have gone on dates with people who are conservative. I'm thinking of like one person in particular where it was like not super overt and partisan, but she made clear that she had some like questions about abortion legality or whatever. This was right after that had happened, after the Roe v. Wade was overturned, I think. And
Bammer.
it was like the context that it came up in was interesting because she was talking about how she was like loosely involved with this like kind of new agey political person who we know and dislike for selling us out at anti-globalization protests 20 years ago. And then,
I know who you're talking about. I will not be saying their name.
And then this lady was like, so I'm like up in her shit, but I'm always getting in trouble because I extend her like ideas to question like the care for the unborn, essentially. That's not the terminology that she used, but like and it made it sound like she was kind of doing that to fuck with them a little bit, which I appreciated, but also you know, it was clear based on a lot of other things that she said that she was like sort of, I would say like politically adrift in some ways, and like didn't feel like, probably had come from a conservative, or I think she told me she'd come from a conservative background, and like didn't feel like any mainstream political movements were sort of like representing her.
Yeah.
That might be giving her too much credit, but I just think it's interesting because it's like having conversations with people like that is valuable, maybe? I don't know.
I think that for me personally, this is my personal take on this. I do think it's valuable to have those conversations with people I'm already in relationship with.
Right.
To have hard, difficult political conversations, and to really like be authentic and vulnerable and go into that space. I don't personally think that it's valuable for me or strategic to do that with people where I don't have any kind of established relationship at this point in my life.
Right. Yeah. I think that's
unless I'm writing an article for The Atlantic about it. Atlantic, call me.
Yeah, in that case, you will reach across the aisle. So, and this does get into, for me, like, I think a frustration that I had in that conversation and in most interactions with, quote unquote conservatives, that you will often hear this thing that's like, pre-assuming that you are judging them and disagreeing with them before you even get it, and kind of like taking this posture of being oppressed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, you're going to reject my ideas, so I'm not even going to say what they are because you already have rejected them and you're not open-minded enough to my ideas, which, like, I feel are in most cases kind of intrinsically oppressive to other people. So expecting me to be open-minded to your ideas about how you should be allowed to oppress other people seems like this weird circular red herring thing that I don't want to do. But man, that shit comes up a lot, and then it comes up in a bigger way in all of this sort of like discourse about how we should listen to people on the other side. And it's this binary, and you used that language a minute ago to say like you were on the other end, right? Like it's a line. and, you know, conservatives are over here and liberals are over here. And if we just like go more towards the middle, then everyone will get along.
No, because conservative and I would argue like fascist influences in this culture, and it's not influences, like they are the power structure in this country. They have more power. I mean, I think that's also the thing that like we have to keep in mind. This country was founded on those ideals by people who believed in them. And by that, I mean like patriarchy, white supremacy, the oppression of other people, the extraction of their labor, capitalism, and profit. Those are the most powerful forces in this country. Meeting them in the middle is not even a conversation.
Mm-mm.
That's not a thing. It's not a thing. And that's like a false pretense that I will not engage with anymore. And I sure as shit am not going to engage with it
In bed.
in bed.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I also think that's like, you just like laid out a framework and an understanding that is like not central to the political discourse in our country. Right. So like when people talk about.
There's
like,
a discourse? Sorry.
Yes. There's a civil discourse, Sarah,
Oh, shit.
and you just shit on it with your ideas about how we're all white supremacists and that our country was founded on slavery and indigenous genocide, and all of that stuff is true. However, you shouldn't say it because it's not polite.
Yeah, how dare you?
And it messes up the discourse.
It does. It certainly messes up the
and that's
discourse.
exactly my
And
point.
some
is that
dates.
nobody has, and a lot of dates. Nobody, that's not the discourse. So people will, it's really hard to connect with people who haven't accepted those things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to connect with them in conversational ways and in romantic ways as well, I think.
And we're back in that moment where Palestine is one of these like bright lines where, yeah, I know that for you, you've mentioned it with people that you're chatting with on the apps and then they've just disconnected from you.
Yeah.
That's happened to me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happened to me recently when it was like with a couple and they like seemed kind of cool and the guy started talking to me right away and then we were going back and forth and then I can't remember. I mean, really, I did it with you because I was like, there's no way Sarah's going to be into this if these people are not on the same page about that stuff. And then I was like, since they've disconnected, I don't have the receipts, but it was something like, I was like, so you're probably pro-Palestine and anti-cop, right? And this was like last week or something. It was right in the middle of all this stuff. And he was like, I'm neither, smiley face. And then I was like, okay. And
okay, first of all, that just like doesn't even make sense grammatically. Neither what?
Neither pro-Palestine nor anti-cop.
Oh, I see.
But
you said you're probably pro-Palestine and anti-cop.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Atlantic again.
She got good grammar.
Yeah, I don't have the quotes. And then I said something very smart, talking about the connections between how can you critique one system if you're like, how can you critique or question monogamy if you're not questioning all these other systems? But I formed it as a question so that it sounded diplomatic.
And they were like,
you said that to
it's
this
easy.
person on the app?
Something like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then they disconnected.
Yeah. They didn't answer.
They did not respond. They were just like, I'm out. And it was diplomatic. I mean, I do want to say, like, I did force the issue to, like, have them tell me what their politics were and kind of, like, purity test them, I guess. But I also
disagree that that's a purity test.
Okay, yeah. Say more about that.
I mean, because we're talking about a genocide, right? We're not talking about, like, some sort of, minutia of signaling performative politics. We were talking about what are your feelings about our money in this country fueling a genocide directly and the people who are protesting it being brutalized and arrested. That's not fucking purity. That's like basic morality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the whole thing about meeting them in the middle.
Yeah.
Their middle is on the wrong side of that morality.
Yeah.
None of the rest of these politics matter in the face of that. And it's wild to me that we're still acting like they do.
And I guess the reason that it matters in that context is that, you know, like the reason for cutting to the chase like that is that you know that you're wasting your fucking time, right? Like we could have not asked that, gone through a bunch of to do, and then gone out with these people, and then kind of found out,
unearthed that.
And it's not that it's it's that what that says about everything else, right? I think that's the big deal, is that you're not going to be values aligned on all of these other things if you're not values aligned on this, like this core thing, right?
And the reason why we're talking about this in reference to this article, critiquing polyamory is just like a sort of elite trend, an indulgent elite trend that's distracting from real political engagement, is because, like with any kind of relationship structure, sexual practice, people will engage with it in a politicized, aware, thoughtful way, and some people won't. And it is not really a reflection on the relationship practice. I wish that weren't true. Like, I want to just be clear. Like, I wish that polyamory was a practice that just like drew to it people who were questioning all of these systems and were looking for expansiveness and like, you know, passionate critique in all directions. That just does not seem to be the case. But that is the case for a lot of people.
I think that stuff really like impacts the kind of like sex that you have with people too. Like you can like fuck across the political divide, but you are like fucking in a very like disconnected patriarchal way that is like reinforcing those same systems. And like progressive people can have that kind of sex, and conservative people can have that kind of sex, and progressive people can have that kind of sex with conservative people. But I think what I want to be doing is connecting outside of those scripts, right? And you can't do that with somebody who hasn't recognized that those scripts are even there.
Sounds a little bit like you're saying the personal is political.
Hey! Yeah. Yes, exactly. And
Holy
maybe
shit.
That's
Gloria
what
Steinem was right.
That's kind of what this article is missing in a lot of ways, is that this is a guy who is just flatly ignoring that possibility, that personal exploration, the kinds of relationships you have, the sort of intimacy that you experience, the way you pursue connection in your life is apolitical at best or anti-political. And in fact, that's just from my perspective untrue.
Right.
But, also, he just has no critique of capitalism. He's just like has some kind of casual contempt of people who are clearly of the same class as him, but no actual critique of capitalism. And I'm just like, if you don't have any critique of capitalism these days, like, you don't get to do any hand-wringing about how people aren't politically engaged enough. Sorry. That's the bar for entry.
Yeah. You'll notice that his list of, things that we should be paying attention to are like climate wars, a perilous election, but not, capitalism and corporate monopolies running roughshod over everything. It's the cause of all of those things, bro.
Or even poverty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. Do you want to hear more redonkulous clips from this?
I mean, I think
article?
so.
Let's tear them apart.
We'll just like squeeze the last little bits of outrage out of this experience that we can. Yeah.
Okay, listen to this one.
We might call this turbocharged version of authenticity culture therapeutic libertarianism, the belief that self-improvement is the ultimate goal of life, and that no formal or informal constraints, whether imposed by states, faith systems, or other people, should impede each of us from achieving personal growth. This attitude is therapeutic because it is invariably couched in self-help babble. And it is libertarian not only because it makes a cult out of personal freedom, but because it applies market logic to human beings. We are all our own startups. We must all adopt a pro-growth mindset for our personhood and deregulate our desires.
Okay. Crazy. So he is critiquing capitalism.
In fact, he did critique capitalism
But
there. I stand
in
corrected.
Well, I mean,
nuttiest way possible.
did he like? I don't know. I was like, in my mind, I was like, but if he was replacing all of these examples with people who like running actual startups where their only goal is to just make a ton of money, would he be critiquing
Well,
that? I
yeah,
don't know.
and it actually, the two things actually have nothing substantively to do with each other now that I think about it. Like, how is that like being our own startups?
Right.
Like, whatever you want to say about
It's just
personal,
like investing in
improvement.
yourself.
impersonal,
something.
has nothing to do with
No,
running
they're
running a
unrelated.
business.
This guy, it's kind of one big nothing burger after. It's like an assembly line of nothing
Yeah.
burgers, I'm realizing, as we go through this. But then he'll come up with these turns of phrases like therapeutic libertarianism that just like makes me want to tear my fucking hair out. You know, I'm like, what?
Well, and what's crazy is that he's making a conservative argument, right? Because he said in that clip, he said people want to do things that they don't want to be constrained by any institutions. Which is like, that's like an inherently conservative critique to be like, there are institutions, there are rules about how to do things, and you should not transcend those institutions. Those institutions, those rules are important. We should conserve them. Like, that is the fundamental
Right.
Well,
premise
Yeah.
of conservatism.
I mean, this is where I think it gets interesting to be a radical leftist, because I'm like, I am definitely critiquing all of those institutions and believe that many of them, if not all of them, should be dismantled and
Right.
So you're,
reconstructed
yeah,
in a
in
different
his
way.
framework, you are, he's got your number.
In what sense?
Well, he's saying these people want to just go and do whatever they want, not do what the institutions tell them to do. And you're saying, yeah, you're damn right.
I see.
Yeah. Or you're not saying I just want to do whatever I want, but you are saying I want to burn your institutions to the ground.
Right. I mean, it's kind of nuanced.
Yeah, and I
But-
think the reason that stuck out for me, and I wanted to talk about it, is that this whole conversation is like a liberal with a capital L conversation, right? Like, this guy's a liberal. The people he's shitting on are liberals.
Liberals are just conservatives, right?
Well, I
Honestly.
think that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that like the liberal conservative political dichotomy is kind of meaningless in all, like, it's come to mean almost nothing coherent, I think.
Yes,
like,
I agree
in
with that.
the modern world, like,
And here he is policing people's sexual behavior too. So I'm just like, what do you guys not do?
Yeah.
As far as conservatism goes, you just
right,
do it all.
yeah, and you don't like people doing what they want because it's distracting them from doing these milquetoasty liberal things to
It's
deal
late.
with climate change.
I've had some hard seltzy.
Yeah.
I'm a little tired, but is it possible that this entire argument is in fact because free love, polyamory, and exploring different types of relationships might cause people to skip entirely over their liberalism and get into radicalism? And is perhaps his argument that they're supposed to stay in this like liberal center? Not necessarily like he's like, I'm concerned that these people would have an incredible fire under their asses for actually improving this world, but they are not because they are having too much sex. I feel like actually what he's saying is, no. We want you to just sit here on Milquetoast Island with us. And anything outside of Milquetoast Island, we are going to morally police. And even if our moral arguments are inconsistent and don't make any sense, we're going to lob them at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good summary.
Milquetoast Island.
He's like,
Atlantic.
Listen.
That would be the title of the article that I would like to write for you.
A review of Tyler Austin Harper's review of Molly Rodden Winter's More.
Milquetoast Island.
I feel like that looks like the Atlantic, something they would put on
Thank you.
Instagram.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, should we try this other clip? Because I think he's going to accuse you of something even worse here at 6:15. Let's see, this is the time code you put in. So this
Is
might
it
be messy.
anti-Semitic? Because I'm getting kind of used to that.
No, it doesn't come up in this article, but it was published in February, so that was before.
That explains it.
We just called everything that we didn't like anti-Semitic.
In his 1978 bestseller, The Culture of Narcissism, Christopher Lasch argued that American narcissism should not be understood as simple self-obsession. Narcissism is a survival strategy. If we are fixated on finding fulfillment and endless self-reinvention, it is because our own inner lives feel like the only thing most of us have control over. The therapeutic cult of personal growth is a response to external problems that feel insoluble, a future that feels shorn of causes for hope. In an earlier book, Lasch wrote about open marriage as the logical endpoint of a narcissistic survivalist culture. The fear and rejection of parenthood, the tendency to view the family as nothing more than marriage, and the perception of marriage as merely one in a series of non-binding commitments reflect a growing distrust of the future and a reluctance to make provisions for it, Lasch claimed.
A couple of things. One, his contempt for what he is describing as wellness culture or therapeutic libertarianism or the cult of the sort of personal exploration, the you do you. I really want to call that out. I don't know if our listeners know this, but I'm a therapist.
You did say it at the beginning of this episode and every episode that we've ever recorded.
I really want to call out that contempt because it is insidious and it's wrong. And the idea that people exploring and understanding their emotions or the ways that their lives and the systems that they live under influence that is somehow shallow and silly and a distraction from what real life is some fucking old-timey bullshit.
Well,
And like, don't let people make those arguments. They're manipulative and cruel, I would say, actually.
I think he would argue that the thing that more serious people do with their internal distress is write articles in The Atlantic about it, rather than go to therapy. It does sometimes feel like in this article, like he does the thing at some point where he's like, this isn't about me. I am happily married.
Every single person who has written about polyamory for any of these, like, since it's been on the bubble or whatever, they all say that at some point.
Yeah.
As someone who is a happily monogamously married person.
And you're
And
like,
I'm
did your partner make you put that in?
Interesting. It's funny because nobody asked you,
That
but
seems
okay.
a little insecure, but okay. You're like, leave me alone, perverts. I'm happily married.
Stop trying to sleep with me. Oh my God.
Yeah, your point stands. It is just kind of like mean-spirited and weird to shit on people's quest for understanding of self and
Mental health.
And from that quest does not follow like intrinsically something bad.
Right.
You know, it's like that is a nutty thing to say.
I mean, that's the capitulation to hopelessness. I mean, he talks about how people like can't invest in the future and they don't see anything worth like fighting for. And so they just are like turning inward. First of all, I disagree with that characterization of where people are at right now. But to me, the true capitulation of hopelessness would be to lose all curiosity about yourself and your own experience of being alive and how it connects to other people's experiences of being alive. That is the entire definition of hope. You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Good point.
thanks. Put it in the comments. I'm going to put it in the comments.
Yeah, well, that concludes our show.
We found it. The meaning of existence.
Yeah.
We really
That
got
concludes
there.
our show, our podcast, and all other podcasts that will ever be recorded. Yeah, no, totally. What a weird thing to
Argue.
be mad about.
What a weird thing to argue.
Yeah.
I think that this man is maybe not very happy.
Mm-hmm.
But we can help him. I'm available for dates. I've already established. I don't care about your political orientation.
And I might be a secret conservative. Just like you.
Try and win him over.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I want to just like also call out, there's this other little quote in here where he accuses polyamorous people of the classic crime of wanting to have your cake and eat it too, which I can't, I mean, I just feel like that's just what everybody says about it.
Yeah.
What do you all think about that quote?
This is taking me back to something I wanted to say earlier. If I were to like try and deeply interrogate the connection between my own dating or like expressions of polyamory and my engagement with like politics in the broader world, like you could maybe make a connection that like you would have to include like kind of mental health there too. When I was like a monogamous, less I don't know, emotionally actualized person who wasn't in therapy and didn't like think about my inner self in the same way that I do now, I was maybe like more pissed off about stuff, and I maybe externalized that anger more rather than like thinking about it and processing it, and maybe that in some cases led me to be more like politically engaged in a way. However, the ways that I expressed that uninterrogated political engagement were just like accidentally progressive, right? Like you could be in the exact same place. If you're telling people like, don't think about that stuff, just like take the rage bottled up inside of you and express it in the political theater, you could end up, you know, joining the military or shooting a bunch of people or whatever. So I don't think that
January
that's
6th
like,
comes to
yeah,
mind.
like storming the Capitol. Exactly. And who knows why you're storming the Capitol. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not really sure why I wanted to come back to that, but
I mean, to me, it sounds like you're talking about, again, wanting to understand yourself and how you connect to the broader world. And that means that you can, when you do engage politically, it can be with depth and meaning.
yeah. Yeah. So we've been talking about like the kind of like liberal conservative dichotomy not working very well. But I do think in all of the like thinking about this and talking about it and the like sort of history around polyamory, there is a dichotomy between like individualism and collectivism that does kind of show up. And that sometimes polyamory is expressed in this sort of like individualist way, like I should be able to do whatever I want to do in spite of what institutions say, and I'm
Or
like,
how others feel.
or how other or how others feel. Yeah, right. And that is like you know, I guess I don't really care whether it's liberal or conservative, but like that is a coherent binary.
Yes,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
And so I'm curious like to hear your thoughts about that. It sounds like you're kind of saying that it could be also a more collectivist expression.
I mean, I think it is for me. You know, when I think about recent political events that I have been engaged in, I have drawn on the community that we've built in part through polyamory. Honestly, actually, a lot of the people involved were people, whether they're people I've been romantically involved with or someone I care about has been romantically involved with, or, you know, they've provided all kinds of care and support for those of us who have been doing more on the ground political action, legal, medical, spiritual, food, childcare. And I personally believe that anything that builds your community and builds an authentic community of care furthers your ability to work for the collective and be politically engaged. I don't think that's actually something that can be done in a meaningful way from an isolated individual position, which is why I also think the personal is fucking political and that these things are connected. And if we aren't interested in building communities of reciprocal like care and like emotional health, then what are we doing engaging in larger political issues? You know, like how do we not start there so that we can then engage in those larger political issues with real intention and a real vision for something else.
Well, and also, what are we doing engaging in broader relationship structures outside of like the prescribed ones?
Right. Yeah.
If you're not going to be doing it with the intention of creating like mutual care, then what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. And so if this author wanted to say that, I would agree with him.
If he said something completely different than what he said, you would agree with him. Yeah.
You know, it's like you can have critiques of how this is being practiced and represented and what it might mean and how it may echo troubling trends in general in the culture. Absolutely. But that is not the full story of polyamory. I wouldn't say that's even like a significant part of the story of polyamory.
This all is making me think about the sort of like notion of objectivity and the way it gets talked about in journalism, and the idea that there could be like a journalist who is outside of everything and therefore can report objectively on what's happening in the world, and how I think like the journalism world has had a real reckoning about this in the past few years, of realizing like how rooted in white supremacy and patriarchy that concept was, and that kind of, it was only old white men who were able to see themselves in that, or that we all were able to see as that sort of like outside, and you know, therefore able to report objectively. And I guess I feel like he is taking that same sort of idea or position, or just saying like you should just be, is it what he's saying, or is it just like what he's living? He's sort of like thinking of himself in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to even position himself as being able to pass moral judgment on how people love, have sex, design their families is inherently kind of arrogant and I think mean-spirited in that way of like faux objectivity.
Yeah.
That there's a right way of doing things and these people are not doing it the right way. And it's like, sorry, who fucking asked you?
Right.
Yeah. Which is, again, I wouldn't say it's either like, you know, he's not like on an individualist or collectivist spectrum anywhere. He's kind of on a weird faux liberal conservative spectrum, or like he's really pointing out the thing that you said, that like those two perspectives are the same when it comes to meaningful issues. It's also, I want to ask, like, so his perspective could be sort of summarized as like very pessimistic about like the rise of polyamory and its recognition, and it's having this moment that it's having is a bad sign.
The fall of Rome. It's sort of like things are getting indulgent and Rome is about to fall.
Yeah. So what is like the counter point to that? Like, what is there an do you like have an optimistic view on
my optimistic
the world
view is that Rome will fall?
Or perhaps Rome already
because
fell.
of polyamory.
Because of polyamory. So in fact, we actually have a lot in common. Oh, no, I mean, I think it is similarly that these institutions and these structures are crumbling and they are failing us even more profoundly and acutely than they have. But I think that's hopeful. I'm excited for that, especially as I see people explore themselves and other ways of living and building communities that work for them, and engaging with authentic expressions of who they are, you know, like that, these things go hand in hand.
Yeah. And the questioning of the institution of monogamy is like a part of that can lead you to, you know, questioning that first can potentially lead you to questioning all the other things, or questioning all the other things first will lead you to questioning monogamy. But regardless, they're connected in that way.
Right.
Yeah. And that is hopeful.
And that is hopeful.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. Thanks for doing a late night Poly-tics session with us.
And thank you for listening to Mistakes Were Made. You can find us and weigh in with your own opinion. Make sure it fits into a neat political binary, though. No, just kidding. You can find us at mistakescast on Instagram and at gmail.com.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.